MPs from the opposition Law and Justice Party, Mariusz Kamiński and Maciej Wąsik, have been held in pretrial detention in Warsaw since yesterday. They both reject the accusations against them and the court verdicts, emphasising that they have been fighting corruption at the highest level since 2005. That is why they treat prison as revenge by their political opponents. The largest opposition party, Law and Justice, considers them to be the first political prisoners in over 30 years. During the arrest of Kamiński and Wąsik, the government ignored the pardon granted to them by the president and the ruling of the Extraordinary Control Chamber of the Supreme Court, which annulled the expiration of the mandates of both deputies. Today, another ruling in this case was issued by another chamber of the Supreme Court, Chamber of Labour. This time, in line with the ruling party's wishes, it found both men guilty. Adrian Borecki has more. Yesterday, at 3 p.m, Donald Tusk said,
Nobody
wants to expose the police to a confrontation with state institutions and the president, so of course we will not take any coercive actions because my task is to protect the state against such dangerous events.
Tego typu zupełnie niepotrzebnymi i niebezpiecznymi zdarzeniami.
4 hours later, the Prime Minister's assurance could be thrown into the rubbish. In the absence of President Andrzej Duda, who was having a meeting with Belarusian opposition in the Belvedere Palace, less than 5 kilometers away, the police used SOP officers to enter the presidential palace. No one showed me any document on the basis of which the police could enter the office. Everyone knew I was there, and they even reminded the security teams that I was there. Tasking SOP officers in a different way from protecting the president to let the police into the presidential palace, all this brings the worst associations. I think it ruins any trust the president has in the officers who are supposed to protect him. The services subordinated to the Minister of Internal Affairs and Administration, Marcin Kawinski, detained Wąsik and Kamiński in the palace and forcibly took the politicians pardoned by the president to a police station and to arrest them. When the president was informed about what was happening in the palace, he wanted to return immediately, but suddenly a public bus blocked the exit from the palace at the Belvedere Palace. The Chancellor of the President says directly this was not the case. Interestingly, a journalist of the pro-government television TVN, Bartosz Cinch, was travelling on the bus that allegedly broke down suddenly. The authorities of Warsaw, where the deputy head of Civic Platform is in power, deny that it was a deliberate action. Public transport in at Warszawa, always at your service. P.S. Bus conspiracy? Really? This is undoubtedly an international scandal that seriously undermines Poland's position on the international arena. This leads to the message being spread around the world that Poland is a country where the police enter the presidential palace in the absence of the president and, against the will of the president, lead deputies out in handcuffs. We have political prisoners in Poland. The world will be informed that the authorities in Poland have detained the vice president of the main opposition party. Mariusz Kamiński's colleagues read his statement in which he announced the start of the hunger protest. I declare that I treat my conviction for fighting corruption and taking illegal actions to deprive me of my parliamentary mandate as an act of political revenge. Therefore, as a political prisoner, from the first day of my imprisonment, I am starting a hunger protest. The reaction of the Deputy Minister of Justice in Donald Tusk's government is outrageous. Of course, everyone has the right not to eat or drink. This is an individual decision. This is the right to personal freedom. Everyone can decide about it for themselves. We are dealing with a change of government to one that is guided by interests external to Poland and an authority that goes so far as to brazenly violate the constitution and violate law. Because of the current government does not recognise the president's pardon, which is constitutional, as indicated by the Constitutional Tribunal. The president had no right to grant amnesty to persons who had not been legally convicted. This is clear. This results from the Constitution. However, there is no such provision in the Constitution. Experts point out pressure on the president to pardon MPs again is setting a trap for the head of state because the pardon is still in force. It has legal force and is not a temporary action and is binding only for a specific period of time. If the president wanted to renew the pardon today, he would deny his decision from 2015. Hence the assurances of President Andrzej Duda. I will not rest until Minister Mariusz Kamiński and his colleagues return to free people as they should be, until they are released from prison. Donald Tusk is inflaming the conflict, threatening the president with prison. Whoever obstructs or frustrates criminal proceedings by helping the perpetrator of a crime shall be punished with a term of imprisonment from 3 months to 5 years.
Zaciera ślady przestępstwa.
I hope that the day will come when he will be held accountable for this type of policy, these types of actions, and these types of statements. The President of Law and Justice appeals to people to come to the same tomorrow at 4 p.m. and take part in the protest of free Poles who oppose Tusk's regime. Adrian Borecki, Telewizja Republika. Just before Christmas, the government decided to forcibly take over the state media, Polish radio, Polish television, and the Polish press agency. Today, the court found the actions against Telewizja Polska to be illegal and refused to register the newly appointed heads of these companies. The court explained that the government did not follow the appropriate procedure. In other words, the court found that the dismissal of TVP's management and supervisory boards by Minister Sienkiewicz was illegal and refused to register it. The court also pointed out that the judgment of the Constitutional Tribunal from 2016, which was cited by those in power, cannot constitute a basis for questioning the powers of the National Media Council. This means that the narrative of the politicians of the ruling coalition, supported by a multitude of lawyers, experts and even journalists, has fallen to pieces, and the action of entering the media with the help of strong people was illegal from the very beginning. The court assessed the case clearly. The takeover of public media by Donald Tusk's strongmen is illegal. The resolution on the appointment of members of the company's supervisory board by the General Meeting of Shareholders, and the resolution of the supervisory board on the appointment of the company's management board, the resolution on the appointment of the members of the company's supervisory board by the General Meeting of Shareholders, and the resolution of the supervisory board on the appointment of the company's management board were adopted by an unauthorized body, according to the above-mentioned provisions of the Broadcasting Act, and also due to the provisions of TVP's statute, in accordance with the provisions of the Commercial Companies Code itself. The decision is not final. Politicians of the ruling coalition argue that it does not change anything anyway because Minister Sienkiewicz has put the public media into liquidation. From the beginning of the attack on public media, President Andrzej Duda indicated that Lieutenant Colonel Sienkiewicz and his men were breaking the law. The lawlessness with which Minister Sienkiewicz operates was confirmed today by the court, which refused to make the entry. In connection with the court's decision, a statement was issued by the current president of Telewizja Polska, who announced that he would take legal action. All decisions made by these bodies are invalid. This applies, among others, to concluded contracts and attempt to illegally release many people from the obligation to work. As the president of the management board elected by a resolution of the National Media Council, I would like to inform you that appropriate legal steps will be taken against any persons acting to the detriment of the company. There was information in the media that politicians from Donald Tusk's camp called journalists and offered them jobs in the illegally taken over public television, as well as salaries well above the market rate. However, those who agreed to these lucrative new contracts may be severely disappointed. Unofficial information from Voronica, for now, payments to new employees have been suspended. The illegal shutdown of several TVP info programs and others, the lawless firing of journalists, the exposure of the station to huge losses due to loss of advertising contracts, and even physical attacks on MPs. All this may result in criminal liability. We are dealing with a radically illegal takeover of huge public property with the consent and encouragement of the Minister of Culture and National Heritage, Bartłomiej Sienkiewicz. And the next session of the Sejm, the Law and Justice Party's motion to dismiss Minister Bartłomiej Sienkiewicz is to be considered. Parliament was supposed to resume work today, but yesterday the Speaker of the Sejm, Szymon Hołownia, unexpectedly moved it to next week. The report from yesterday's protest, during which the speech of opposition leader Jarosław Kaczyński was suddenly interrupted, says a lot about the new standards of TVP, ruled by people appointed by Donald Tusk.
Odnosi się do ludzi, którzy chcieli, żeby w Polsce w tej sferze został przywrócony.
Zerwane połączenie sprzed aresztu śledczego Warszawa-Grochu.
Initially, Donald Tusk tried to take over the media by force. However, as a result of the actions of law and justice politicians and media coverage on the attacks on public media buildings, the government changed its mind. Bartłomiej Sienkiewicz put the public media into liquidation, which, according to the chairman of the National Broadcasting Council, Maciej Świerski, is also illegal. Thousands of people from all over Poland will be in the capital tomorrow. At 4 p.m. there will be a demonstration in front of the parliament against the violation of the media law and the imprisonment of law and justice politicians. For the first time since the fall of communism, there are political prisoners in Poland. Jarosław Kaczyński said in an interview for Telewizja Republika, tomorrow's demonstration in front of the Sejm is a chance to support freedom of speech, public media and democracy. Protests in defence of public media Protests have been taking place since the 20th of December. Less than a month after taking power on the 13th of December, the coalition managed not only to violate the constitution and shut down public media, but also to cause a split in the Supreme Court.
Apeluję do marszałka Hołowni.
I appeal to the Speaker of the Sejm, Szymon Hołownia, and Prime Minister Tusk to stop destabilizing the Polish state. Avoiding social unrest and stabilizing the social mood is still possible.
Czas możliwa.
The protest of free Poles will start tomorrow at 4 p.m. in front of the Sejm. Law and Justice President Jarosław Kaczyński warns against proposals to change European Union treaties, which he considers a threat to Poland's sovereignty. This is a very advanced process. It involves changing treaties, a very far-reaching change. If implemented, it will turn our country into an area where Poles live, managed from outside, formerly from Brussels, but actually from Berlin.
Zmieni nasz kraj.
Moreover, Law and Justice politicians point out that the forcible takeover of public media, changes announced to the judiciary, as well as turning Mariusz Kaminski and Maciej Wąsik into political prisoners, are methods of power typical of the Belarusian regime of Alexander Lukashenko.
Donald Tusk,
locking Mariusz Kaminski and Maciej Wąsik in prison, says to state service officers, "You must not fight corruption among the elites. The elites are to be given impunity, because if you expose corruption as Maciej Wąsik and Mariusz Kaminski did, you will suffer the same consequences they suffered."
Jeśli ujawnicie korupcję, tak jak robił to Mariusz Kamiński, tak jak robił to...
The arrest of Law and Justice politicians Mariusz Kaminski and Maciej Wąsik shocked public opinion. Several hundred people showed up in the middle of the night in front of the police station in Warsaw, and at least 500 people showed up in front of the presidential palace. The protest of free Poles will start in front of the Sejm and end in front of the headquarters of the Television Information Agency. Determination is the only language they understand. They come directly from the functionaries of the communist state. They only understand strength and retreat only from the stronger.
Siłę i cofają się przed siłą wyrażoną z godnością.
The father of a 19-year-old Israeli woman held hostage by Hamas militants said that he dreads finding out what his daughter is going through after footage emerged of her, looking wounded and scared, sitting alongside 3 other teenage hostages kidnapped on the 7th of October.
I'm afraid. I'm afraid. No negotiations. My daughter is 90 days, more than 90 days, under the ground. No oxygen, no food. Is someone to take care of her? She's wounded. All the girls. What will happen? This is my emotion. I don't know what happened. I don't know what to think. I don't want to think what happened on what is getting over on her, because I will get crazy. I just need her home now.
In the video, 19-year-old Agam is seen with blood on her face, sitting against a wall next to other female hostages who also appear to be wounded, with one crying. They have been identified as 19-year-old Karina Ariev, 19-year-old Daniela Gilboa, and the youngest female hostage, 18-year-old Liri Albag.
I think the video is a brutal thing, because I don't know what was Hamas or means when he put this video out, but you saw the pictures. You saw my daughter, Agam. You saw wounds. You saw her face. You saw all the girls on their face, what have been through on them. It's terrible.
The 4 abducted from Nahal Oz joined the deadly attack on Israeli communities by the Islamist militant group Hamas, which rules the Gaza Strip, on the 7th of October, in which 1,200 people were killed and some 240 abducted.
This is the most important thing that we should do now. Bring everybody home, especially the young girls. Especially the young girls. They are in terrible situation, as you see in the pictures, in the article. They are wounded. They are wounded. We don't know what happened to them. You all saw and learned and heard and read about the New York Times article about sexual harassment, what happened on the 7th of October. It can happen right now, and we don't know. Because we need them home now.
Speaking outside a Tel Aviv hotel where United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken was staying during his visit to Israel, Berger asked for more diplomatic pressure to release all hostages. Israel said 132 hostages remain incommunicado in captivity, more than 90 days after the attack, without access to the Red Cross. Some hostages who were released under a week-long temporary truce deal between Israel and Hamas in November say they saw some of the other captives in Gaza. Their testimonies of sexual abuse and deprivation of food and medicine have raised fears for the hostages left behind, including a baby and a toddler, more than a dozen women and elderly men. Israel says the release of all hostages is a prime objective in its military campaign against Hamas in Gaza, and that it would not stop fighting until Hamas releases all of them.